one of the biggest menaces on Columbia University campus, who was actually thrown off campus for stalking students, Shai Davidai, is a green card holder, but he's an Israeli who is the face and voice of the Zionist movement in trying to disrupt and crack down on these protests. I mean, this guy could actually be accused of real crimes. This is Gen X Girl 1994, good researcher on a lot of this. Here's Shai Davidai. Like Mahmoud Khalil, I too am on a green card. Unlike Khalil, I don't support US designated terrorist organizations, take over university buildings, and call for the genocide of anyone. He wasn't arrested for speaking up. He was arrested for breaking the conditions of his stay here. No, he wasn't, because he's not accused of breaking any conditions. There's no evidence or accusation. He's now accused of possibly being a threat to US foreign policy objectives. And you support a terrorist organization, Shai Davidai, based in Tel Aviv. The state of Israel is the leading architect in the world of state terror, and even boasts about it when, for example, it plants explosives in pagers and maims children in Lebanon. It shops its story to 60 Minutes to brag about state terror. And Shai Davidai is just a harasser and a stalker who, I mean, this is him.
Holloway thinks that if he pushes Shai away, his problems are over. Cass, this message is for you. I'm not going anywhere. And you can go fuck yourself until we meet at court.
What a psychopath. Again, removed from Columbia's campus. Mahmoud Khalil was never behaving like that, was never removed from Columbia's campus, wasn't involved in any violence, isn't not accused of handing out any Hamas flyers. But the Israeli guy is all over the media and may have actually played a role in Mahmoud Khalil's arrest. So it's so obvious what's going on here. And we're under a kind of occupation where Zionist billionaires can fund a presidential candidate like Donald Trump and get him to do whatever they want to bend the legal system to the point where there's no due process.
And it's so bad that they also fund his rival too. And the rival candidate set the stage for all this by enabling a genocide and also smearing campus protesters, because Joe Biden did that as well. I mean, he didn't go as far as Trump did in trying to deport one, but he certainly smeared campus protesters against genocide as anti-Semitic. And he also takes a lot of money from, Jewish supremacist billionaires. And so they're in both factions.
The Biden administration started this crackdown. And look at what's happening at Yale University with Elie Dutagi, who was suspended from her position at Yale Law School after an artificial intelligence-powered news site accused her of being linked to Samidun, which is now known as a terrorist organization. This is what the New York Times isn't really going to tell you, because the Biden administration designated it as a terrorist group under pressure or through incentivization from the Zionist billionaire class that was funding the Biden administration's campaign. Samidun is not a terrorist group. Samidun was doing support for Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. And it's supposedly accused of being connected to the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which is the leftist Marxist Palestinian faction. Basically any Palestinian faction except for the occupation subcontractor in Fatah, which is working with Mahmoud Abbas or operates with the Palestinian Authority or is the Palestinian Authority. They're all listed as terrorist groups. I mean, the term terrorist basically has no meaning, and now it's being applied by AI sites to get professors fired without due process. This started under the Biden administration. It was Matt Miller at the State Department who announced that designation, and now it's having consequences in the one institution in American life that Zionists can't fully control or harness: academia. So yeah, you're right. Here's something disturbing about how this came about, or especially disturbing. There's so many elements to it. I mean, we talked a little about the legal element, but here's, I mean, how did this develop? We've been making these claims that the Zionist movement is behind Mahmoud Khalil's detention. How could that be? I mean, I thought, it's U.S. agencies that are concerned about national security. No. Columbia University documenting Jew hatred at campus on Columbia U. What is the date on this? March 7th. This is before he was detained. Mahmoud Khalil, the foreign student who is one of the leading agitators on campus, is still causing trouble. He seems to be present at every encampment, every sit-in or building takeover. Yesterday, he managed to get onto campus despite not being a current student. Blah, blah, blah. Their Secretary Rubio, please revoke Mahmoud Khalil's visa. Notice they're not saying green card. They're saying visa. And then this is March 6th, they're going after him. This is the agitator who tries to stay behind most of the time due to his foreign student status. So this is a Zionist group demanding that Rubio target Mahmoud Khalil. The Jewish Daily Forward wrote this up. Jewish groups targeted Columbia grad Mahmoud Khalil, then ICE arrested him. And we also have on January 31st, the right-wing Zionist group Beitar, which has been handing out fake pagers to Palestine solidarity activists in New York, among other menacing activity, which is inspired by the Beitar youth group of Zeb Jabotinsky, the intellectual inspiration of Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud party. They announced that they were using AI to gather data on students who were on foreign visas in order to feed it to ICE and get them deported. So the lists were already in motion 3 days before February 2nd, when the Department of Justice established its task force on anti-Semitism, which was a promise that Trump made to Zionist billionaire donors like Miriam Adelson. And there's one other element to this, which is especially disturbing to me, because I didn't know who Mahmoud Khalil was before he was arrested. I didn't have much involvement. I wasn't on Columbia's campus when this took place. I didn't have involvement in the trenches of these student groups, of these student sit-ins. But, we both are associated with a point of view that supports them. So when I was interrogated, or I shouldn't say interrogated, questioned somewhat politely but menacingly by an officer of Customs and Border Protection at Dulles International Airport, and he presented a list of names to me, it was after 3 a.m. in the morning. I was weary, coming from a long flight from Nicaragua. Nothing to do with any politics. The names were sort of hazy, and they were handwritten by that agent. But one of them, which I could remember clearly because it was an Anglo name, Susan Benjamin, turned out to be the name of Medea Benjamin. I didn't know it was Medea's name at the time. And there were other names that I tried to remember. And one of the names that I wrote down in my post about this was Muhammad Khan, but I wasn't sure. There's an M and an H in the first name, and then a KH in the last name. That could have been Mahmoud Khalil's name that they were asking me about. It looked like it appears clear to me that my questioning just days before Khalil's arrest was a Trump administration flag. I wondered if it could have had something to do with the Biden administration, and it could have been that I was flagged. I mean, a lawyer friend, an immigration lawyer, told me Zionist groups could have gotten you flagged. And I said, no way. Now it all seems to be kind of coming together. And I can't be 100% certain that I was asked about Mahmoud Khalil, but now it all seems to be coming together. the Trump administration is being pressured by Zionist groups. It's relying on extremely fanatical, radical Zionist groups to gather names and data. And then it's going after them in order to appease the Trump's donors who paid for his campaign and who are going to pay for the Republican midterm campaigns. And they don't care very much about the Constitution, about the First Amendment, or even about the law, because they're not bringing any concrete charges. So we should expect more. If they're like questioning me in an airport and probably questioning others to gather intelligence, this is like a rolling process where they're just trying to wrap up as many people as possible into a dragnet to shut down these protests that where they've lost control, because Israel has lost the war of ideas. And there's nothing else it can do but repression, and it has the opportunity to do it now that Trump's in office. I mean, it was happening under Biden, but Trump has issued much more concrete promises to them.